So, dinosaurs were big, and by far the biggest of all were the titanic sauropods. These behemoths eclipsed anything else ever discovered on land. The discovery of some sauropods changed how we view animals, raising questions on just what is the physical limit of an animal. They have mesmerized and captured the imagination of people of all ages. And I remember being a youngster walking through the doors of the London Natural History Museum and looking up at Dippy, the Diplodocus skeleton, towering over the entrance hall. So recently I started wondering, just how did these animals get so big? What evolutionary traits led to these unprecedented sizes? The question of why led me down a research rabbit hole that I wish to share with you today. So ladies and gentlemen, grab a brew, sit down and relax, and join me as we look at just how these dinosaurs became the largest land animals in history. I am your host David King. Now let's get to it. So before we get into the how, let's first look at just how big sauropods could get. So we all know sauropods are big. They're the largest land animal ever discovered. But depending on how you define largest, there are a few different species that can take the crown. The heaviest and largest sauropod by mass was the mighty Argentosaurus, reaching an earth-shattering weight of 65 to 80 tons. To put that into perspective, that is 13 to 16 African elephants, the largest land animal alive today, and it's 4 times the weight of the heaviest land mammal ever, which weighed 15 to 20 tons. If you define the largest as the tallest, one of the tallest sauropods ever was Sauroposeidon, the lizard earthquake god, reaching heights of 16 to 18 meters, which is the equivalent of a 6-story building, whilst one of the longest sauropods ever was Supersaurus, reaching lengths of 33 to 40 meters long. That's the equivalent of a 12-story building, a third of a football pitch, or 13 school buses back to back. So now we know just how big these animals could get. Let's look into the reasons for why these animals got to these unrivaled sizes. So during my research, there was a common myth that kept popping up that I wanted to quickly dismantle. You often see statements that dinosaurs got so big because oxygen levels were higher during the time periods. However, this is not true. Modern oxygen levels hover around 21%, and during the early Triassic period, when dinosaurs started to become the dominant species, oxygen levels were around 11 to 15%. Now this was due to the Permian-Triassic extinction event, which is the largest extinction event in history, which dramatically lowered the oxygen levels, whilst by the end of the Triassic and throughout the Jurassic and Cretaceous period, oxygen levels did rise to about 15 to 25%, so it was still similar to modern levels. So oxygen levels were not the cause of sauropod gigantism. It is however true for giant insects found in the Carboniferous period, before the evolution of the dinosaurs. This is a time period where oxygen levels rose to around 30%, leading to monstrous sizes of insects and arthropods. So what are the real causes of how sauropods got so big? So the main theory we will be following is called the evolutionary cascade model, refined in 2013 by a researcher named Sander. In very basic terms, it is a chain reaction of specific evolutionary traits causing the development of other traits, leading to a feedback loop. And this feedback loop between the traits is what causes the increasing sizes of sauropods. Now there are 5 main traits that we will be looking at in detail, and how they led to the gigantic sizes: avian style respiration, high basal metabolic rate and rapid growth, long necks and small heads, feeding, and finally reproduction. So first up, let's take a look at how a dinosaur breathes. You may know already, but birds are dinosaurs, and they even share the same respiratory system. This is also the system used by crocodilia, a very close relative of dinosaurs, both being archosaurs. This system is called the unidirectional respiration. O2-rich air is breathed in. This air fills up the air sacs, which can be found in the bones of dinosaurs, including sauropods. As CO2 is exhaled, the oxygen-rich air in the air sacs flows into the lungs, where the gas exchange can occur. This way of breathing allows a constant supply of oxygen for the animal. This is highly beneficial for animals with high energy demands, such as those of massive animals. This system helps sauropods in a couple of different ways. Due to the bones of sauropods being more hollow, their skeletons are much lighter than if they had been solid. This also helps solve the problem of how oxygen can be supplied up such a long neck, a problem known as the dead space problem. A unidirectional respiration system allows sauropods to grow to supersized beasts and still have high oxygen levels supplied around the body. The second evolutionary trait we will be looking at is the high basal metabolic rate of sauropods, or BMR, and the rapid growth of juvenile sauropods. BMR, in basic terms, is the minimum number of calories required to maintain essential life functions, such as circulation and respiration. The BMR of sauropods has been hotly contested, but current research leans towards sauropods having very high BMR, which would have been necessary due to the extremely rapid growth that we see in young sauropods. By examining the bones of sauropods, like how we examine for rings and trees to see their age, we can tell that sauropods would have reached their adult size in about 30 to 50 years. As well as this, towards the end of the reign of the dinosaurs, sauropods demonstrated the ability to have constant growth throughout the year, unlike other animals which have seasonal growth spurts. The rapid growth of juveniles was essential for the survival of the species, due to the pressure of theropod predators, and the lack of parental care, which we will look at later. The other important thing about sauropod metabolic rate is that due to their large size, they have a lower mass-specific metabolic rate. So smaller organisms, such as mice and rats, require much higher metabolism to sustain the higher heat loss. Sauropods, having a much lower surface area to volume ratio, would not require energy to keep warm. Instead, the problem they would face is overheating. Much like how elephants today are in danger of overheating, sauropods would have required systems dedicated to thermoregulation to prevent this overheating. This would have most likely been done via their long necks to expel heat, and the unilateral respiration system to keep their bodies cool. The third evolutionary trait is also one of the most striking things about sauropods: their long necks and proportionally small heads. The long necks of sauropods allowed a much larger feeding envelope, meaning that sauropods have had to expel less energy moving around to find food. Instead, they could stand still and just move their long necks from tree to tree or bush to bush. A common thing that will become prevalent is how sauropods biologically expend as little energy as possible, so more energy is available for growth. This is also why we find sauropods having small heads. A small head reduces the energy required. As stated earlier, a long neck would have also acted as a source of heat loss, much like how elephants' large ears expel heat to keep them cool. The small heads of sauropods leads into our fourth trait: feeding. Sauropods have a small head due to the fact that they did not chew their food to save energy. Not chewing their food eventually led to sauropods losing their jaw muscles, effectively shrinking the size of the head. Instead of chewing, sauropods would have stripped branches, crop vegetation, and swallowed whole. To get the nutrients from non-chewed food, sauropods would have had very large stomachs, enabling the plant matter to ferment in the stomach. The larger the stomach, the more fermenting can happen, and the more nutrients can be extracted. This led to much larger body sizes. Both the small head and the no chewing would have again helped sauropods be more energy efficient, by spending less energy on chewing food, and less energy digesting their food. The last evolutionary trait we will be looking at is reproduction. Like all dinosaurs, sauropods laid eggs. Whilst you may believe that to match their size, their eggs were huge, but this was not the case. From fossil evidence, the largest sauropod eggs were about the size of an ostrich egg, but sauropods also had eggs the size of grapefruits. To explain this mismatch in size, we have to look at first how an egg works. The larger the egg, the thicker the eggshell. However, at a certain point, the thickness of the egg would cause the hatchlings to be unable to push their way out of the egg, killing them inside. Sauropods laid eggs in nests, laying dozens of eggs at a time, multiple times a year. Similar to turtles, sauropods laid large quantities of eggs, but had no parental care. Whilst films like Land Before Time show sauropods as paternal figures, this would have been basically impossible. The sheer size of sauropods would have meant a high chance of crushing both the egg and the hatchlings. Instead, sauropods engaged in something known as R-selection reproduction. R-selection is what we see in mice, turtles, and the majority of insects, where the female lays large quantities of eggs but provides little to zero parental care, instead using the number of hatchlings to increase the chances of at least one individual reaching adulthood. Hence why I stated earlier, The rapid growth of young sauropods was highly important due to them having no protection in their early lives. As well as this, sauropods were most likely born pre-cochlear. This is where an animal hatches already mature and mobile, again to increase the survivability of the young. All of these traits work in tandem, building off of each other. High BMR leads to high growth rate, which leads to a larger body mass, which leads to lower mass-specific metabolic rate, which again leads to higher BMR. The large body mass leads to a large gut, which leads to plant fermentation, leading to no chewing or jaw muscles. Smaller heads leads to longer necks, for more energy-efficient feeding. Longer necks leads to increased heat loss, and the avian-style respiration allows the oxygen to be supplied after long necks, whilst also helping with heat loss, which again leads to a higher BMR and a higher body mass. Just one of these traits alone wouldn't have led to the gigantic creatures that we have found. It requires all of them working together and creating feedback loops to allow these dinosaurs to reach sizes never before seen. And this brings a close to our in-depth analysis of just how sauropods became so big. These giant animals are so utterly unique in their biology and size, and we still do not have all the answers. I hope you have all learned something interesting about these wonderful animals. Remember to keep discovering. Until next time, goodbye.